just the way you are, which was really bad timing for it to hit.
People he doesn't really like that I do.
For years, fans asked the same question. Why did one of Hollywood's most beloved young stars suddenly disappear? Kristy McNichol was once at the top of her career, starring in popular TV shows and movies and winning the hearts of millions. But just as her fame was growing, she quietly stepped away from Hollywood and vanished from the spotlight. The sudden decision left fans shocked and confused, and for decades, the real story remained a mystery. Now, at 63, Kristy McNichol is finally speaking out. After keeping certain secrets hidden for years, she is opening up about the truth behind her departure and the difficult experiences she kept buried for a long time. What really pushed her to leave everything behind, and what was happening in her life when the cameras stopped rolling. Today, we're uncovering the story that stayed hidden for decades. Kristina Ann McNichol was born on September 11, 1962, in Los Angeles, California. Her father, James, worked as a carpenter, while her mother, Carolyn, was a registered nurse. When Kristy was just 3 years old, her parents separated, leaving Carolyn to raise Kristy and her two brothers, Jimmy and Tommy, on her own. It was a challenging beginning, but their home was filled with determination as their mother worked tirelessly to support her children and guide their futures. Kristy's path toward fame began very early. By the time she was 6, she had already appeared in her first television commercial. It wasn't by chance. Carolyn quickly recognized her daughter's natural presence and decided to manage her career herself. Because of this, Kristy never really experienced the quiet life of an ordinary child. Auditions, cameras, and expectations became a normal part of her childhood. Growing up in this unusual environment meant that family life revolved around work. Her brother Jimmy was also pursuing acting, and while most children were still dreaming about what they might become, the McNichol siblings were already building careers. Their home was loving, but far from typical, shaped by busy schedules and constant auditions. Throughout the early 1970s, Kristy appeared in small roles on popular television shows like Starsky and Hutch, The Bionic Woman, Chips, Love, American Style, and The Love Boat. Family friend Desi Arnaz helped open a few early doors for her in the industry. Her first regular television role came in 1974, when she was cast as Patricia Apple on the CBS drama Apple's Way. The show only lasted one season, but it quietly introduced her to Hollywood. Even then, people on set noticed something special about her. In 1976, Kristy McNichol stepped into the role that would quietly transform her life. She was only 13 when she was cast as Letitia Buddy Lawrence in the ABC drama Family. The series followed the Lawrence family, a middle-class household in suburban California, but it was far from a typical television show of that era. While many programs avoided uncomfortable realities, Family chose to confront them. It explored subjects like divorce, illness, grief, and identity, stories that reflected the complicated side of real life. At the center of those stories was Buddy, the youngest daughter of the Lawrence family. Kristy worked alongside respected actors such as James Broderick and Sada Thompson as her parents, and Meredith Baxter as her older sister. Yet, it was Kristy who often left the deepest impression on viewers. There was a natural honesty in her acting that felt rare, especially for someone so young. She didn't appear to be performing emotions. She seemed to truly feel them. Each week, audiences watched Buddy navigate the confusing emotions of growing up. Through her character, Kristy captured the vulnerability, curiosity, and uncertainty of teenage life. The series even touched on themes that were considered bold at the time, including a storyline involving a gay character, something rarely seen on television in the late 1970s. For Kristy, who was privately struggling to understand parts of her own identity, those moments may have carried a deeper personal weight. Her remarkable performances quickly drew attention across the industry. Kristy received 3 consecutive Emmy nominations for Outstanding Supporting Actress in a drama series in 1977, 1978, and 1979. She won twice, first in 1977, on the very night she turned 15, and again in 1979. In 1980, as the series neared its end, she was nominated once more, this time for Outstanding Lead Actress, along with a Golden Globe nomination. By the age of 16, Kristy McNichol had become one of the most recognized young actresses in America. Around that time, she and her brother Jimmy also explored music, releasing an album together in 1978 through RCA Records. They even promoted it at the legendary Studio 54 and appeared side by side in the Carpenters' holiday special, A Christmas Portrait. For a moment, everything seemed to be moving in the right direction. Fame was growing, opportunities were everywhere, and the future looked bright. But behind the success, Kristy's life was already becoming more complicated than the public could see. For most people, the teenage years are a confusing time filled with self-doubt, private mistakes, and the slow process of figuring out who they really are. But Kristy McNichol never had the luxury of experiencing those moments quietly. Her adolescence unfolded under bright studio lights and in front of millions of eyes. She appeared on shows like The Mike Douglas Show and Dinah, competed several times on Battle of the Network Stars, and regularly appeared on the covers of magazines aimed at teenage fans. Her face was everywhere, familiar in living rooms across America. From the outside, it looked like a dream life. But living it as a child was far more complicated. Years later, Kristy spoke honestly about the pressure she felt during that time. Auditions meant constant rejection, and success brought its own weight of expectations. While other teenagers went to school dances and planned for prom, Kristy's life revolved around scripts, filming schedules, and public appearances. She missed out on many ordinary moments of growing up. As she later reflected, she never attended prom, rarely experienced normal school life, and often felt she had little control over her own choices. Her career moved quickly, and she was expected to keep up whether she was ready or not. At the same time, she carried something deeply personal that she felt she had to keep hidden. Growing up in Hollywood during that era, Kristy believed she couldn't openly talk about her sexuality. The pressure of keeping that part of herself private added another layer of emotional strain to an already demanding life. In June 1980, after 5 seasons, Family came to an end. Kristy was just 17, and from the outside, it seemed like her career was only beginning to grow. She began transitioning into films, eager to prove her range as an actress. She had already appeared in the 1978 dark comedy The End alongside Burt Reynolds, and that same year delivered a powerful performance in the television film Summer of My German Soldier, playing a young Jewish girl who secretly protects a German prisoner of war. But the film that truly widened her audience was Little Darlings in 1980. Starring alongside Tatum O'Neal, the story followed 2 very different teenage girls at summer camp who make a risky bet about losing their virginity first. Kristy chose to play Angel, the tougher, street-smart character, bringing both strength and vulnerability to the role. Her performance helped ground the film emotionally, and audiences responded. The movie became a commercial success, earning over $34 million and winning Kristy a People's Choice Award when she was only 18. She continued building momentum in 1981 with roles in The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia and Neil Simon's Only When I Laugh. The latter earned her a Golden Globe nomination for Best Supporting Actress, proving that she was being recognized as a serious performer, not just a former child star. For a time, it seemed her career was rising steadily towards something even bigger. Yet behind the scenes, the pressure she had carried for years was beginning to take its toll. Quietly and almost unnoticed by the public, things were starting to unravel. In 1982, Kristy McNichol traveled to France to film a romantic comedy drama titled Just the Way You Are. From the outside, it seemed like another step forward in a promising film career. But behind the scenes, something inside her was beginning to collapse. Years later, Kristy spoke about that period with painful honesty. She struggled to sleep, often found herself crying, and felt emotionally overwhelmed throughout the shoot. It wasn't caused by one sudden moment. Instead, it was the quiet buildup of years spent under pressure. Since childhood, her life had been controlled by schedules, expectations, and constant public attention. She had rarely been given the chance to simply live as a normal person. Eventually, the weight of it all became too much. During filming, she suffered what was widely described as an emotional breakdown, forcing production to pause. Although Just the Way You Are was eventually finished and released in 1984, Kristy had already stepped away from the spotlight. Looking back, she explained that the collapse came from many directions at once. Years in an unforgiving industry, the absence of a private life, and emotion she had kept hidden for far too long. As she once said, people often assumed there must have been drugs involved, but in reality, the pressure alone was enough to break someone so young. When she slowly returned to acting, the industry had changed its attitude. Opportunities were fewer, and studios had concerns about reliability. She continued working in projects like Dream Lover and Women of Valor in 1986, followed by smaller roles in You Can't Hurry Love and Two Moon Junction in 1988. But the powerful momentum she once had in the early 1980s never fully returned. In 1988, Kristy McNichol returned to television with what seemed like a new chapter in her career. NBC launched Empty Nest, a spin-off of the beloved sitcom The Golden Girls. The show followed a widowed doctor, played by Richard Mulligan, adjusting to life with his two adult daughters. Kristy took on the role of Barbara Weston, the younger daughter, a tough and independent police officer whose strength suited her natural screen presence. Viewers were happy to see her back. The series carried the same warmth and humor that had made The Golden Girls so popular, and its steady Saturday night time slot helped it build a loyal audience. For a few years, it appeared that Kristy had finally found a stable home on television again. She remained with Empty Nest through the first half of its fifth season. Then, in 1992, she suddenly left the show midway through the season. The reason wasn't fully explained at the time. It wasn't until 1995, when Kristy returned briefly for the series finale, that she shared the truth. She had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and realized she had to make a difficult choice between continuing the show and focusing on her health. Bipolar disorder involves cycles of emotional highs and deep lows, and managing it requires stability and care, something difficult to maintain in the demanding environment of television production. In the early 1990s, public understanding of mental health was still limited, and the stigma surrounding such diagnoses was strong. For Kristy, however, the diagnosis helped explain struggles she had quietly carried for years. Choosing to step away from the spotlight allowed her to focus on her well-being. After her brief return for Empty Nest's finale in 1995, her time as a regular presence on screen essentially came to an end. She later provided voice work for animated series like Extreme Ghostbusters in 1997 and Invasion America in 1998, but the era of Kristy McNichol as a familiar face on television had quietly come to a close. In June 2001, Kristy McNichol quietly closed the door on a career that had defined most of her life. Through her publicist, she announced her retirement from acting at the age of 38. It was a striking decision, but in truth, she had already spent nearly a quarter of a century in the entertainment industry. Her journey had begun when she was just a child, long before she was old enough to drive, long before she had the chance to understand what that life would truly demand of her. Her statement was simple, yet deeply personal. Kristy explained that it was finally time for her to take on the most important role of all, being herself. She understood that fans who had grown up watching her might feel disappointed, but she was honest about the fact that the choice was necessary for her happiness and peace of mind. There was no scandal, no dramatic goodbye, and no hint that she might return someday. She had simply decided that the rest of her life needed to belong to her, not to the cameras. For many people who had followed her career since childhood, the announcement felt bittersweet. Yet, looking back, it was also an act of quiet courage. After decades of living according to schedules, expectations, and other people's decisions, she was finally choosing her own path. Life after Hollywood did not become a story of disappearance, but rather one of rebuilding. Kristy began teaching acting at a private school in Los Angeles, sharing the lessons she had learned over the years in front of the camera with a new generation of students. Instead of performing for audiences, she helped others discover their own voices and confidence. She also devoted time to charity work, traveled, and allowed herself something she had rarely experienced before: rest. For the first time in many years, her life was no longer dictated by filming schedules or production calendars. In 2011, she followed another quiet passion by enrolling in the music program at Los Angeles Valley College and joining the school choir. It wasn't a publicity stunt or an attempt at a comeback. She simply loved to sing, and the joy of rehearsing with others who shared that passion became a meaningful part of her life. She later became involved with the Los Angeles Valley College Foundation, helping raise funds to support the school's music program. In interviews, she spoke warmly about how important music could be for young people, something she believed deserved protection and support. Then, in 2012, Kristy shared something deeply personal with the public for the first time. In an interview with People magazine, she revealed that she was gay and introduced her longtime partner, Marty Allen, a teacher she had been with since the early 1990s. Their life together was quiet and far removed from the bright, demanding world of Hollywood. The announcement came without drama, just an honest moment from someone who had carried that truth privately for many years. Kristy explained that she chose to speak openly because she hoped it might help young people who were struggling or facing bullying because of their identity. By then, she was 50 years old, and her life had settled into something calm and fulfilling. In later interviews, she described a peaceful home life, her love of singing, trips to Hawaii, and the companionship of her miniature dachshunds. When asked about acting, she didn't completely rule out the possibility of returning someday, but she made it clear that the life she had built away from the spotlight was something she treasured deeply. After a lifetime spent performing for others, Kristy McNichol had finally discovered something far more valuable: the freedom to live simply as herself.